Hello, my name is Alexey Matveev, and in this video we will continue to talk about the application which we created in the previous video. And in this video we will explore the source code of the application. Okay, we've got a Node.js application. That's why first we will have a look at the package.json file. This file contains configuration for our package. And here is the file. And you can see we create the name of our application, version, we see private, just to make sure it can be published. We've got dependencies for our application, which should be installed for our application to run. And we've got we have dependencies ESLint, which analyzes our application for errors, and it let us fix the errors during the development process. Okay, so what's important here? I would like to pay attention more to script. So what we can see here, that's we define here the start command. That's basically the command which needs to run our application. So that's how we run our application, right? So if we go to the folder of our application, we can start it with npm start. That's it, and it's working. The other command which we've got here is ESLint app.json rows. This command will analyze our code for errors, and it will let us know what we should fix. I would also add this key so that some errors which could be fixed automatically would be fixed automatically. Let's try it. Let's try to run the command. And we've got two errors. So the first one, that auth is not defined, and the second one, config is not defined. Okay, let's fix it. So it's 24.8 in app.json. 24, here it is, so we can delete it. And the other problem, we had problems with the config variable. Let's find it, this one. So basically we fixed everything. Let's try to run npm runlint again, and there are no problems with our application. Fine, done. Okay, next thing which we should explore is the config file, config.json. As this file provides parameters for our application, and it's got development section and production section, which means that you can provide different parameters while you are developing your application and when you go to production. Basically, you can add any other sections. For example, you could for example copy this one and paste over here, and now you've got another section which you also can use. For example, let's say you've got a development environment, you've got stage environment, and you've got production environment. Now you can provide different parameters for all of those stages. How to choose the section? By default, development section is chosen. You don't need to pass any parameters or something. It will be just the development option. But let's say you want to choose production. To choose the production option, you need to set the node env variable to production. For example, how to do it in my environment. So I would do it like this: export node env equals to production. That's all. Now if I run my application, the application will use parameters from the production section. As simple as that one. Okay, now let's explore the config file a bit more. For example, see here all values in the development section are defined as static values. It's hard coded. Port 3000, localhost I also hard code here. But for example, in production, we've got variables for values of some attributes, for example, for port, or for example, URL for our database. How to provide these parameters? Again, you need to create an environment parameter with the same name. For example, let's say I want to define the port. I will do it like this: export port equals 3000. And the same I have to do for the database URL. Export equals to, I don't know, and in here you need to provide your database URL. That's all. And now if you run your application, it will use the production section and provide ports at 3000 and database URL as my database URL. That's it. So it's simple as that. Okay, let's explore the next file. The next file, let's explore atlassian-connect.json. This is a descriptor for our application. You can read about descriptors over here, for example. Uh, Cloud descriptor. Here it is. And this descriptor is queried by Bitbucket when you install your application to Bitbucket. And Bitbucket, by reading this file, will know what modules your file uses, what is the key of your application. Okay, let's have a look. So what it does, it defines the key, the name of your application, description, it defines the vendor who made this application, it defines the base URL. The base URL, you see, it's a parameter. This parameter is defined in config.json file. Here it is. So basically, if you use encroc, you need to change this parameter every time. Because, for example, I use a free version of encroc. All the time I create the encroc tunnel. It's a new API address, and that's why I need to put it here. So we define the local base URL. Because if you don't define this local base URL, Bitbucket will not know how to query, for example, the install endpoint or an install endpoint. It will not be able to query it. Okay, so that's why it's very important to provide the correct base URL in the config.json file. Then we define installed and uninstalled endpoints. Bitbucket queries install point when you install your application, install endpoint when you uninstall your application. Installed endpoint mostly defined within the Atlassian Connect-Express, or we edit. We have, I'll find it here. Yeah, we have here edit also an endpoint, which actually sets the correct URL for Bitbucket API. And then, but anyway, this one is called after the Atlassian Connect-Express is called. So Atlassian, the installed host point of Atlassian Connect Express also works. And then install endpoint, we also defined it ourselves. Atlassian Connect Express doesn't define this endpoint. And we can find this endpoint in the routes index file. Yeah, it's here. So basically right now we just return 200 code. Okay, what's next? We've got an Atlassian connect.json. Then we define our modules. Modules are integration points where your application can connect. For example, webhooks. Webhooks, so these are events which happen in Bitbucket. So if something happens, for example, a pull request or a commit happened, Bitbucket can send you an event that this happened, and you can catch it with the webhook URL. Webhook URL is also defined in routes. Over here, webhook. Yeah, here it is. So basically right now we do nothing. We just inspect the body and put it. But basically we could do something useful. If, for example, commit happened, we got the request and then we process it and do something. Okay, what's next? Next we define a web items modules, web pages, web panels. You can read about this modules also in the Bitbucket documentation. Go, for example, over here, modules. You see here you've got all modules. That's the repo page. What else we had? Web panel, web item. So basically, you can read information about what this modules do. Okay, so and then we define scopes. Scopes are very important. When you install your application, Bitbucket asks if you can grant access to scopes which are defined in your application. So in this application, we define account and repository. So Atlassian will ask you, will you grant access for this workspace to account and repository? And if you say yes, then your application will be installed. You also can read about scopes in the documentation of Atlassian, what scopes are available. Yeah, somewhere here, scopes and context, define access parameter, account, repository. Yeah, you can see the information over here. And you can find all the scopes in this documentation. So basically you've got repository write, then you also, if you just provide repository, it's a read access. If you want to write, then provide repository write. So you can read all the scopes in this documentation. And then we also provide context. You can also find in the Bitbucket documentation, you can also find information about context. That's it, basically, for our application.json. Okay, so right now we saw all configuration files, and now let's dive into our application app.js. What happens here? Basically, there is a good documentation uh, in this file, so you can read it. I will just pay attention to some things. For example, it's important that we use handlebars here. Handlebars is a template engine for HTML. So we use HBS. We define that all templates for HBS are placed into the views folder. Let's have a look at the views folder. Here it is. You see we've got three files: unauthorized, connect example, and layout HBS. The unauthorized.hbs provided by atlassian-connect-express when an error happens, when Bitbucket, for example, queries your page and the page cannot be provided, for example, not enough authorization or something, and then this Atlassian-connect-express throws this page. To throw this page, actually you need this parameter error template to true. Only in this case, Atlassian Connect Express will throw this page. Okay, and then also we've got layout HBS and connect example.hbs. Layout HBS, it's a root template which should be present for all other templates. All other templates must be children of this template. What it does, it defines important JavaScript files, CSS files for Bitbucket. So for example, this script and this CSS file let you use the same fonts, the same styles which Atlassian defined in Atlassian Design Guide. And this one, where is it? All.js, this one. This script is very important. If you don't load the script, Bitbucket will not be able to present your page. So all.js always must be in the dependencies for your HTML file. And then you also load your own JS files, this addon.js, JS addon.js file, and you also add your CSS file. These files, we discussed these files in the previous video. You can have a look at these files are placed in the public folder. So basically all static resources must be placed there. Okay, so that's layout HBS. What's connect example.hbs? Connect example actually provides the display name of the user, which was retrieved on your server. Also, it provides the display name of the user, which is retrieved with the API request in the JS file. In our addon.js, here it is. Repo path and some other information. It doesn't matter. Okay, so that's for templates. Now, how these templates are called. Let's have a look at our atlassian-connect.json. We can see here modules. And now we can see that, for example, repo page queries connect example REST endpoint. And also it provides context parameters for this endpoint. We will talk about context parameters in the next video. Okay, so what happened here? Let's first find our connect example. All roads we defined in the roads folder, index.js. We already exported this file. And okay, now a bit more about this file, how it is called. It is called from application.js over here. Over here, see, it's called. So when application is initializing, then roads are called and all our endpoints are initialized. Okay, so let's have a look at our roads file. That's index.js, and then we want to see a connect example REST point. What happens here? We, first of all, very important to see that we use add-on authenticate. This function verifies that the client was correctly identified in Bitbucket. And this authenticate function must be used only when Bitbucket queries your module. If, for example, you wrote your own request in JavaScript, which you loaded to the page, then you shouldn't use add-on authenticate. You should use add-on verify token. And we will talk about it later in one of our next videos. Okay, so what happens here? Here we define the HTTP client. It's very important because right now we want to query Bitbucket itself. You see, we're going to query 2.0 user. We're going to query this endpoint in Bitbucket. To query this endpoint in Bitbucket, we've got to do some magic to get the correct token from JWT, and only after it we need to call this endpoint. And this line actually let us get the HTTP client which already can query the Bitbucket endpoint. All magic is done within atlassian-connect-express. Then we query the endpoint, we get the data, and then we just render our page called connect example. That's how we call HBase templates. As simple as that. And we provide parameters over there. That's it. Then after it, connect example called, this one, all parameters, for example, repo path, display name, are put inside the HTML text. Then this one, connect example, is inside the layout.hbs in the body tag over here. You can see it here. And that's it. The page is provided. So as simple as that. Okay, so basically we saw all the code. That's it for this video. Thank you. See you next time.